After experiencing a technical difficulty, the Cafe Americain podcast was cut off after an hour and 3 minutes. But we'll continue. I'm your intrepid host, Christian, and we were talking about the whole Epstein thing and how Fusion GPS, the one that created the Christopher Steele dossier, that is the genesis of the whole Russia-Trump collusion nonsense, how they investigated Trump and any sort of Epstein ties. Interesting. The firm behind the unsubstantiated Trump-Russia dossier found that the Trump-Epstein link appears purely social, according to the Washington Times, which writes, journalist sources told the Washington Times that Simpson pushed the idea of a close relationship between Mr. Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, adding Ken Silverstein, the reporter who ultimately wrote an Epstein-Trump report, confirmed to the ties that Fusion had sourced the story. So we've got more Democrat nonsense, more Democrat rumor-mongering, muckraking, mudslinging nonsense being thrown out there from Hillary Clinton's people, from Democrat National Committee people. This crap is still going on from the same sources. Mr. Silverstein, who wrote the Vice.com story, was asked by the Washington Times if Fusion pushed the Epstein-Trump story. Since you asked, yes, they helped me with that, Mr. Silverstein said. But as you can see, I could not make a strong case for Trump being super close to Epstein, so they could hardly have been thrilled with that story. In my humble opinion, that was the best story written about the Trump's ties to Epstein, but I failed to nail him. Trump's ties were mild compared to Bill Clinton's. Ooh, not good. Not good. So speaking of Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton has to be on a list. Let's just see who's on that said list. Well, before we do that, let's quickly go back to the arrest of Epstein himself. That prosecutors say that images were obtained during his arrest that were extremely concerning. The new case includes additional alleged victims who weren't covered by Epstein's non-prosecution agreement, according to Bloomberg. And he argued, Epstein's attorneys argued that the images seized in the raid of his Manhattan mansion are ancient and show consenting adults. Okay, sure. And they're claiming that this case is essentially a do-over. Jack Posobiec? I don't know how to say his name. Tweeted the other day that Epstein's lawyer was already made a proffer to the Southern District of New York, where Epstein is being tried. Epstein will agree to cooperate with the investigation, including giving up the names of individuals that paid for activities with underage girls in exchange for a maximum sentence not to exceed 5 years. By the way, the individual prosecuting or helping to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein is none other than James Comey's daughter. Convenient, isn't it, that one of the main architects of covering up dirty Clinton deeds happens to have a daughter prosecuting somebody up to their eyeballs with Clinton associations. One of the people representing Jeffrey Epstein is none other than Alan Dershowitz, loudmouth schnook from the ivory towers of the intelligentsia. Also, Alan Dershowitz is on the list of travelers that frequented the Lolita Express for Jeffrey Epstein. So you've got a potential pederast defending an even larger pederast. Way to go. This is just atrocious. It's atrocious, but we have to talk about it. As the defendant acknowledged in his most recent New York State sex offender registration. By the way, Jeffrey Epstein got off on the low. Well, that's an unfortunate phrase. Jeffrey Epstein, during the first trial, got the lowest level of sex offender. And for some reason, he got that. Because it was supposed to be the highest level of sex offender that Jeffrey Epstein was supposed to be nailed with. But for some reason, he got off with 1. I think it was, I forgot the exact ranking, but it turned out that Jeffrey Epstein got the lowest level of sex offender. Now, there was a document that came out during this first investigation that Jeffrey Epstein was working with the FBI. He said something along the line, I don't have it in front of me, but he said something along the lines, I was working with the FBI, or I was doing what the FBI wanted me to do. Now, why? Why? You have to ask yourself that. Who's the head of the FBI at that point when the first time Epstein was nailed? None other than Muller. Yes, Russiagate Muller. So then you have to ask yourself one more question. Why did Mueller's investigation, quote-unquote investigation, have an unlimited budget? Have unlimited time? Have unlimited jurisdiction? Unlimited subpoena power? Why? It wasn't to go after Russians. It was to go and clean up any sort of dealings as best as he could that Clinton had associated with human trafficking and felonies. At least that's my opinion. Then you've got Weissman hanging... Weissman, who was Mueller's number 2 in the Russian investigation. How Weissman is the one that really took the lead on any sort of Russia angle involving Trump. And we find out that he's full of shit. And so he is going to be investigated, I believe, as well, because, well, he just abused his power. So there's a lot going on here. There's just a lot. So, continuing with this, we have Muller covering up for Epstein. Now, please tell me why that is. Why did Epstein get off on a lighter or the least charge? And why did Epstein say that he was working for the FBI? Mueller's FBI. What's that about? What does Muller know? Let's really get down to brass tacks on that one. If Mueller's FBI was able to reduce the amount of punishment for an international child trafficker and pederast, what does Mueller know, and what was Epstein doing coordinating with the FBI? I would assume it has to do with blackmail. Wouldn't you agree? There's an interesting little blurb that came out, and I'll read it in full. Because it has a bit of... Let's see. Does this actually have anything to do with what I'm talking about? I believe it does. Or maybe not. No, it doesn't. Never mind. Now, it's something else that's interesting, but it doesn't really apply to this. It doesn't really apply to the whole Epstein angle. So screw it. I'm not going to bring it up. Anyway. So those are the big questions that you have to ask yourself. What I was going to read involves Muller. It's still interesting, but maybe I'll bring it up another time. But it's interesting, but not for now. Anyway. So, going back to this whole Epstein thing, he clearly kept a log of all this stuff. And he clearly wanted to cover his tracks. Because, not necessarily cover his tracks, but at least have an insurance policy, a la Anthony Weiner. So, he had a list of individuals that include none other than Caribbean singer Jimmy Buffett and Jane Buffett, Ralph Fiennes, I don't know who that is, Alec Baldwin, David Blaine, I'm not surprised about, Courtney Love, big surprise there, Charlie Rose of, I believe he was on PBS, Mike Wallace, another reporter, Barbara Walters, Ehud Barak, no surprise there, Tony Blair, David Koch, John Gutfreund, I don't know who that is, and Prince Andrew. About 50 entries, and this is being reported by, I believe it's Gawker. But this book came out, I believe the Gawker article came out in 2015, so this is old hat. About 50 of the entries included those of many of Epstein's suspected victims and accomplices, as well as Trump, Courtney Love, Ehud Barak, not Barack Obama, Dershowitz, and others. In addition to the names above, as well as scores of apparent underage victims in Florida, New Mexico, California, Paris, and the UK, listed under the rubric of massage, he circled a few entries, including billionaire Leslie Wexner, former New Mexico Governor Bruce King, former New Mexico Governor and Democratic presidential hopeful Bill Richardson, Peter Soros, nephew of notorious George Soros, no surprise there, former Miss Sweden and socialite New York City donor Ava Anderson Dubin. I'm telling you, this is not a male-oriented thing. This is an elite-oriented thing. It is beyond that. Let's see what else. Adam and Elizabeth Lindman, I don't know who they are. George and Freda Lindman, Alex and Jacqueline Lindsay, Ludovic Lindsay, Blake Lindsley, David Lipley. No people I know. Robert Lucasio, CEO, Livewire. That's interesting. Richard Lonsdale, John Lorimer. I don't know who any of these morons are. Courtney Love was circled. Carol and Earl Mack, the Mack Company. Interesting, isn't it? Dershowitz joined a 2017 motion brought by filmmaker and author Michael Cernovich to unseal records from a 2015 defamation case brought by Epstein victim Virginia Roberts Guffrey against British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell. Guffrey says Maxwell helped Epstein traffic herself and other underage girls to sex parties at the billionaire pedophile's many residences. Many residences include London, Paris, Grenada, Tangiers. It's not... they got the wrong name. I don't believe it's Grenada. Stephenville, often, I believe, Nova Scotia, Bangor, Maine, Teterboro, Atlantic City, New York City, St. Louis, Pine Bluff, Addison, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, West Palm Beach, Bahamas, U.S. Virgin Islands, Santa Fe, New Mexico, so on and so forth. Trump being reported as the only one to have helped investigators booted Epstein from the Mar-a-Lago club. So there's a gentleman on Twitter. His name is Quentin, Quantian, Quaintien. Fudge. hit the wrong damn thing. So, he makes a very interesting, I guess, conspiracy theory, if you will, about why Epstein did what he did. So other high-profile names, and I'll read that in a minute. Other high-profile names include Bill Clinton, oddly enough, Ralph Fiennes, Janice Dixon, Mick Jagger, Richard Branson, Candace Bushell, Cornelia Guest, Naomi Campbell, George Hamilton, George Mitchell, Michael Bloomberg, Dustin Hoffman, Christy Turtington, woof, Phil Collins, Tom Ford, Vera Wang, Itzhak Perlman, Henry Kissinger, no surprise there, Kevin Spacey, oh, I'm not a pedophile, I'm just gay, Andrew Cuomo, Barbara Walters, Liz Hurley, Joan Rivers, Simon Lieben, Nadia Byerton, I don't know, Koo Stark, whoever that is, Charlie Rose, what a smug prick, Courtney Love, ooh. Hey, you know the difference between Wayne Gretzky and Courtney Love? Wayne Gretzky showers after 3 periods. Lauren Hutton, Alec Baldwin. I never liked Alec Baldwin. Everyone loves him on Saturday Night Live or wherever else. I don't understand it at all. He's not funny. He's not witty. He's stupid, hackneyed, and a jerk-off. And I'm sure many other names will be coming out with all of this. So, I mean, it's a so going back to Quentin, it's a 13 tweet, 13 tweet thread. And essentially, he comes up with a scheme that Epstein, having no financial background, somehow manages to get billions of dollars in assets from individuals that barely know him. And the whole crux of the thing is that not that Epstein is a brilliant financier. What he's doing is accepting blackmail money in the form of investments to offshore accounts that have no records of individuals that are part of this fund and saying, look, I need to make a living. You give me money in the form of millions of dollars to my fund. It goes into an offshore account. Your name is not on the record. Nobody can touch it. And I continue to supply you with your debaucherous vice. And so everybody gets what they want. That's essentially what Quentin is talking about here. And I could buy it. I could certainly see that. But there's a deeper angle here. These individuals that are associated with all of this disgusting behavior and trafficking, these individuals have a much, much deeper disturbed mentality than anything beyond merely being a pedophile, as if that wasn't bad enough. You know, this has to do with a massive, massive, disturbing culture within the elite, the financial elite, the religious elite, the intelligentsia, the political elite. It's all up there. And this kind of mindset is prevalent throughout those circles. And I'm going to leave you with this because I'm effing tired. And those circles do not have mankind's best interest in mind. Like I brought up in the beginning of this program, they are hedonists. They believe in do what thou wilt shall be the only law of the law. Well, actually, let me bring it up. I had it right the first time, but I'm fucking tired and I can't remember it this time. Let's see. I'll read it verbatim because it's important. Here we go. You have to be a telemist. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That is a very And that's a partial quote, by the way, because these disgusting these disgusting human beings, there's a love angle to the full quote of this, but they only partition that little snippet of it. So they only believe in the telemist form of it, and do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, meaning that you look out for yourself. You imbibe in all of your vices without any sort of repercussions, and you have no other cares than for your own well-being. And that's what this is all about. You're talking about a literal satanic cult in charge and running rings around the population of this planet in the elite circles. That's it for the Cafe Americain podcast. I am your intrepid host, Christian, and I have to go because my voice is shot. I am tired. And until next... Oh, by the way, this week, we've got important stuff. I'm going to be beginning again another podcast. It was called Resonance. I did that for earlier this year in the spring. I was off for about 2 months from that until they got things saddled up on their side. So Resonance is back in action. You can listen to me on Thursdays. I'll have more information on that. Look for me on Twitter with more information, and also on what's the other thing? This is how tired I am. Instagram. Also, you have my other show on terrestrial radio where I do not swear, and that is the Cafe Americain radio show. That's on 90.1 WUSB. If you are on Long Island or potentially in Connecticut, you can listen to me Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m., and if you're not in Stony Brook or in New York or Long Island, wherever you are, then you can listen live at WUSB.FM on your web browser. So fire up Safari or whatever the hell else you got and listen to me live there. Music, parties, good times, and who knows what else could ensue. And finally, you've got this show, and I'm supposed to be a guest on another show called, I believe, We Are the PsyOp. I don't know when that is supposed to occur. It was supposed to occur this week, but that's still up in the air. Anyway, so be on the lookout for another episode of Resonance. That's starting back up. My radio program, Cafe Americain Radio, on WUSB 90.1 FM. Look out for more episodes of this Cafe Americain podcast, and look out for my guest appearance on We Are the PsyOp Radio. That's it for me, and this is your host, Christian.